Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We welcome all our guests from all over the world that have decided to tune in to Peace TV today to watch this series of Dawah ilallah and how to study the sciences of how to call people to Islam using comparative studies. And so what we have been doing in the last few episodes is finding ways that we can not only change others but change ourselves. And how to be effective in our dawah when we call people to submit to Allah by understanding sometimes simple things that we look over, like our culture. We assume that when we are doing dawah that it's the same type of dawah ilallah to everybody. But it depends on the cultural perspective of the person you are speaking to, how they're going to understand what you are saying. We said that something simple as prayer can be seen in totally different lights, depending on whether you're from the East or you're from the West. In the West, it is more, I want to learn from God and I want to be corrected. Where in the East, it can be more of a spiritual aspect to it, where it is simply recitation, calming, meditative. But we need to understand that when we explain to people to check that neither of them have gone to the extreme in the interpretation of it. Martin Luther, who was the reviver of the Protestant movement, understood that prayer was whipping and beating and bruising and cutting himself. That's how he thought he would find closeness. There are still people today which we call Calvinists within Christianity, who believe that if you die with one sin in your life, no matter how many good deeds you did, no matter how devout a Christian you were, no matter how much you loved God, you're going to burn in hell forever, just because of one sin. There are Calvinists who believe that. Obviously they're extremists, but they believe that. So they've taken the interpretation from a cultural perspective. Then you have people in other countries, especially from the East, who think that it's all so easy. And so they've taken a few mantras that they say every morning, but they've missed the point. They've actually missed the boat. The boat has left the harbor and they still think they're on time. So we've got the two extremes. We have to make sure that from a cultural perspective that we understand these exist. And if we had to have a ruler, everything in our life is linear. Linear means straight line. Everything, except no exception in this life. So everything fits into a category from 0 to 30, just for argument's sake. We could take it to 10 billion if you like, but for argument's sake we'll just say from 0 to 30. That's everything that we experience in life. Food, diet, sport, marriage, wife, children, everything fits on that line. We all slide up and down that line all the time. We need to find a spot where we should be, moving up and down. So in the same way with these two different extremes, we need to find a balance with them. Sometimes somebody who comes from an Eastern perspective, in the beginning he might need a more closer to the 30 in the beginning, just to pull him away from his idea that everything is just so easy. And when somebody from the West is coming in, maybe you need to pull him right down to like 3 or 4 on the scale to become more spiritual, just so that he doesn't become so hard. And then there needs to be a happy medium eventually. So you have to keep an eye on this. You have to look at it yourself even in your own life. See, where am I going? Am I up at the top here or am I at the bottom there? Or am I doing it the way Allah expects me to do it, having an understanding? So culture is very, very important for us to understand on something as simple as that. Today we live in a world of spiritual materialism. You know, sometimes we talk about physical materialism, but there's a spiritual materialism. People are competing to see who could be more sanctimonious and who could be more spiritual than another. I was driving the other day in a car and the motor vehicle in front of me was a sticker and said that God has no form except in this man. And there was a picture of some new guru that now he's God. God has no form and no shape except in this man. And they had a picture of this. So there's people all claiming that, you know, they're gods. People are trying to compete with spiritualism. Who can be more spiritual than the next? Television is full of these charlatans who claim that they can see ghosts and expel ghosts and do all sorts of things, trying to be more spiritual than the person next to them. or the guy down the road, or the church across the street, or some person who's misunderstood what Islam is all about. In my country, we get these little stickers that you put on your car windows. And it says, contact Musa Ali. He will resolve your problems in your marriage life and financial problems and everything. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. So everyone's in this spiritualism, fighting to who can be. So we're living in a spiritual materialism age. So we have to be cautious. Just like there is materialism in this world where people focus more of their attention on the physical than the spiritual. Some people who focus everything on the spiritual, nothing on physical. So there's a saying I often like to say, that some people are so spiritually minded, they are no earthly good. We were put on planet Earth for a reason. You know, some people, they don't do Dawah because they are too busy with their own spiritual discovery of self-discovery, and therefore nobody else matters. Nobody else is important. We must have a balance. We must be very, very cautious of this. So people are taking, you know, the ego to the extreme and trying to force their own spirituality on other people. And so what they've done is, we find there's a very sad combination here of ego and spirituality somehow being forced together. You've seen them, you know them, and you look and you just feel there's something wrong here. They are so full of themselves, how proud of what they are. The ego is so gigantic, there's no room for Allah in their lives. And then they want to impart spiritual mysteries to you. That person should be humble. They should look and emulate the prophets. May Allah be pleased with all of them. Look at their lives. Look how they behaved. Did they have this idea that they need to become, you know, spiritual gurus? Somebody must do everything for them. They do nothing for themselves anymore. I went to the Islamic Research Foundation today, as I said, and I went and I was humbled how small it is. Some of you might think there's this gigantic palace in India where Peace TV comes from, and there's this gigantic, huge, massive building where the Islamic Research Foundation is. You see, humbleness. You don't need big, massive 3 stories of a building, big, massive signs to do the work of Allah. You just need faithful people. You just need committed members. Yes, yes, I know people are going to say, because the properties are so expensive, they could have found a cheaper area, but they chose not to. Money was rather to be spent for more important things. And this is a lesson for perhaps maybe have a Muslim organization in your country, and you just got wasted space. You're sitting there with 3, 4 stories in a building, and you've got places that have been turned into museums, so that when fundraisers come visit your building, you can show them your museum. And what actually gets used? 5–10% of that building. The rest is just there for fundraising. It's a gimmick. We have to be serious if we are Muslims. We can't play games. We're going to be held accountable for that. You need to utilize your space properly. So we have to be very cautious of what we are doing as Muslims. If you are claiming to be a Dawah organization or da'is or whatever you want to call yourselves, whatever term you want to call your institution or yourselves, you must make sure that you are doing it for the sake of Allah, not for name, claim and fame. I was humbled. It gave me a lot of things to think about when I go back to South Africa. A lot of things to think about. When I went, every space is utilized. There is no wasted space. And it runs like a smooth machine. I encourage you, if you come to India, go visit Areeb. It'll change your thinking, inshallah. So we live on planet Earth, and we live in this body, and our body has, in a way, a mind of its own. Our body does things sometimes. They call it body memory. If you play sports, if you play golf, if you fencing, if you go horse riding, whatever sport you have, you'll know exactly what I mean when I talk about body memory. Your body remembers stuff. You stop even thinking you're doing it. If you want to know if your body does things on its own, watch when somebody throws something to you when you're looking somewhere else. What do you automatically do? You go, you didn't even see it, but your body picked it up. Your mind saw it and immediately gave your body a message, which it did without you even having any control of what you just did. It's called body memory. So you could say your body is thinking. And so we have to understand that there is a code that our body runs on. We have to continuously train it so that it has body memory. So when we are teaching someone to become a Muslim, those who practice upon submitting to God, that person who's practicing to submit to Allah, he needs to learn body memory. So it doesn't become something he has to work at, something that he does. But again, we've got to look at that scale. Be cautious. Don't let it all be about actions. And don't just be about sciences and hard stuff. You must keep that scale balanced on what you're teaching them. Let's take a break. When we get back from the break, we'll continue, inshallah.